Hey, I'm Connor. I'm 23, and I live in a small town just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. I've always been good at fixing things, building stuff with my hands. While most of my friends headed off to college or found office jobs, I spent the last 4 years learning every aspect of handyman work I could get my hands on. My dream was simple: start my own home repair and assembly service. And 3 months ago, I finally took the plunge. It's nothing glamorous yet. I've got an old blue Chevy pickup that makes weird noises when I turn left, a toolbox I inherited from my grandfather, some basic power tools I bought secondhand, and enough determination to make up for what I lack in fancy equipment. I called my business Fix It Right Services, even made some business cards at the local print shop, and put up flyers around town. At first, my only customers were family members and a few neighbors who felt sorry for me. I wasn't making real money, just enough to cover gas and maybe grab lunch at the diner. But I knew I had to start somewhere, build a reputation one job at a time. I told myself every day, treat every job like it's the most important thing you'll ever do. That's how people remember you. One Thursday afternoon, I was sitting in my truck outside the hardware store, going through my receipts and trying not to feel discouraged about how little work I'd had that week when my phone rang. Unknown number? Hello? A warm, friendly voice answered. Hi, is this Connor from Fix It Right Services? My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, gave me your number. I just bought some furniture that needs assembly, and honestly, I'm terrible at that kind of thing. Are you available? I sat up straighter, trying to sound professional despite my excitement. Yes, absolutely. I could come by today if that works for you. She gave me her address in Oakwood Hills, one of the nicer neighborhoods across town. When I hung up, I just stared at the phone for a moment. This was it. A real customer who found me through word of mouth, not family pity. Maybe things were finally starting to turn around. An hour later, I pulled up to a beautiful 2-story colonial house with a well-maintained garden, stone walkway, and a wraparound porch that looked like something from a magazine. The kind of place that made you think whoever lived there had their life completely figured out. I grabbed my toolbox from the truck bed, took a deep breath, and reminded myself to be professional. I rang the doorbell, and after a few moments, the door opened. I'll never forget that first impression. She looked to be in her late 30s, with shoulder-length auburn hair pulled back loosely, wearing a casual sundress and sandals. There was something immediately warm about her smile, the kind that made you feel welcome before she even said a word. She had confident eyes and carried herself with the kind of poise that came from experience. You must be Connor, she said, extending her hand. I'm Victoria. Thanks for coming on such short notice. No problem at all, Miss Victoria. I appreciate you calling me. Just Victoria is fine, she laughed softly. No need for formalities. Come on in. I'll show you what I'm dealing with. She led me through a tastefully decorated living room filled with warm colors and comfortable furniture to the staircase. As we climbed to the second floor, I noticed family photos lining the walls, artwork that looked expensive, and everything perfectly arranged without feeling stuffy. So, you're just starting your business? She asked as we reached the landing. Yes, ma'am. Yes. About 3 months now. Still building up clientele. Mrs. Patterson spoke very highly of you, said you fixed her kitchen cabinet doors and they work better than when they were new. I felt a flush of pride. Mrs. Patterson had been one of my first real jobs, and I'd spent extra time making sure everything was perfect. I tried to do things right the first time. Victoria led me into a spacious spare bedroom with hardwood floors and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. In the middle of the room sat several large boxes, instruction manuals scattered around them like someone had started and given up in frustration. I ordered a new bed frame online, she explained, gesturing at the chaos. One of those modern platform beds with built-in storage drawers. Seemed like such a good idea until I opened the first box and saw about 1,000,000 pieces and instructions that might as well be written in ancient Greek. I looked at the boxes, blank. It was definitely one of those complex Scandinavian-style pieces that required patience and attention to detail. I can handle this. Probably take me a couple hours depending on how cooperative these parts want to be. Victoria smiled, and I noticed how it reached her eyes. Perfect. I'll be downstairs if you need anything. Can I get you some water or coffee before you start? Water would be great, thank you. She brought me a cold bottle of water and left me to work. I opened the first box and immediately understood her frustration. There had to be 60 different pieces, not counting the hardware. But I'd assembled enough furniture to know the secret was organization. I laid everything out systematically, grouped the screws and bolts by size, and checked each component against the parts list. The instructions were actually pretty clear once you figured out their numbering system. But this was definitely a job that required careful attention to detail. One mistake early on could throw off the entire assembly. About an hour in, I was making good progress on the main frame when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Victoria appeared in the doorway carrying a glass of iced tea and looking genuinely interested in the progress. "How's it going?" she asked, leaning against the door frame. "Good progress," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead with my sleeve. "Got the main frame and support structure assembled. Now comes the tricky part, the storage drawers and the headboard mounting system." She walked into the room and examined my work. "Wow, that looks completely different already. You really know what you're doing." I shrugged, tightening a support bolt. "I like puzzles, and I like when things work the way they're supposed to." "That's a good attitude," she said, settling into a chair by the window. "I wish more people approach things that way. Most of the contractors I've dealt with lately seem to be in such a hurry they cut corners." We talked while I worked, light conversation about the neighborhood, how long she'd lived there, what got me into handyman work. She mentioned she worked as a marketing consultant, mostly from home since the pandemic, which explained the nice house and flexible schedule. She'd been divorced for a few years, no kids, and had bought this place as a fresh start. "You seem young to be running your own business," she observed, as I carefully aligned the drawer slides. 23, I confirmed. "But I've been learning this stuff since I was a kid. My grandfather was a carpenter, taught me that if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right." "Smart man. What does your family think about you skipping college for this?" I paused, considering how honest to be. "They think I'm crazy. Keep asking when I'm going to get a real job, with benefits and a steady paycheck." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "People fear what they don't understand. Building something from nothing takes courage." Another hour passed, and I was deep into installing the complex drawer mechanism when Victoria came back upstairs, this time with a sandwich and another glass of water. "I'm making lunch," she said. "Nothing fancy. Just grilled cheese and tomato soup. You're welcome to join me if you want to take a break." I was about to politely decline. Mixing business with personal stuff seemed like it might cross professional boundaries, but something about the way she offered made it feel natural, genuine, like she wasn't just being polite. "That sounds really nice, thank you." We sat at her kitchen table, which overlooked a beautifully landscaped backyard, eating comfort food that reminded me of home. She asked about my business goals, what it was like starting from scratch, whether I had plans to expand. I found myself being more open than I usually was with customers, telling her about the challenges of building a reputation, the satisfaction of fixing something that was broken, the dream of maybe having a small crew someday. "You're ambitious," she said, stirring her soup. "I admire that. Most people your age want everything handed to them, want success without putting in the work. I just want to build something that's mine, something I can be proud of when I look back on it." She nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that completely. That's exactly why I started my own consulting business instead of staying at the corporate job that was slowly killing my soul." After lunch, I went back to work on the bed frame feeling energized. The afternoon sun was streaming through the bedroom windows, and I could hear Victoria moving around downstairs, the faint sound of jazz music playing somewhere in the house. It was peaceful in a way that made the work feel less like work and more like crafting something meaningful. The drawer installation was challenging. Each piece had to be perfectly aligned or the whole system would bind up. But I took my time, double-checking measurements, making sure everything slid smoothly before moving to the next step. I was attaching the final drawer slide when Victoria appeared in the doorway again, and I could feel her watching as I made the precise adjustments needed to get everything working perfectly. "You're incredibly focused," she said softly. "I've been watching you work, and you never rush, never take shortcuts. Everything has to be exactly right." I looked up from my work. "That's the only way I know how to do things. My grandfather used to say, 'Your name goes on everything you touch, so make sure you're proud to put it there.' He sounds like a wise man. He was. Taught me that craftsmanship isn't just about the end result. It's about the process, taking pride in every step." Victoria smiled. "That's a rare quality these days." I spent another 40 minutes on the headboard mounting system, which required precise measurements, and careful attention to weight distribution. Victoria came and went, sometimes watching me work, sometimes bringing me water or just checking in. Each time, we'd talk a little more, and I found myself looking forward to her visits. Finally, I tightened the last bolt on the headboard and tested each drawer. Everything moved smoothly, the frame was solid and level, and it looked exactly like the picture on the box, maybe even better. All done, I announced, gathering my tools and surveying the completed bed with satisfaction. Victoria came over to inspect the finished product. She ran her hand along the smooth wood surface, opened and closed each drawer, tested the sturdiness of the frame, then turned to me with a smile that made my chest feel tight. "Connor, this is absolutely perfect. Better than perfect, actually." "Thank you. I'm glad you're happy with it." She looked at the bed, then back at me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Something playful, but also serious. "You know," she said softly, her voice taking on a different quality, "you should probably stay and make sure it works properly." I blinked, not sure I understood what she meant. Everything's working fine. I tested all the moving parts, checked the stability. Victoria's smile became a little more knowing. "I meant make sure it's comfortable, sturdy enough for its intended purpose. You know, the most important function of a bed." The implication hit me like a lightning bolt. I felt my face get warm, and for a moment I didn't know what to say. This was definitely not standard customer service territory, and I'd never been in a situation like this before. That's not really. I mean, I should probably. She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume, something light and floral that made my head a little fuzzy, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate," she said gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just think it would be a shame if you did all this beautiful work and never got to see how well it turned out." I looked at her, trying to read her expression, trying to figure out if this was really happening or if I was completely misunderstanding the situation. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. "Victoria, I don't want you to think I expect anything like this from customers. That's not why I'm here. That's not who I am." She reached out and touched my arm lightly, her fingers warm against my skin. "I know that. That's part of what makes you different. But sometimes good work deserves more than just payment, don't you think?" My mouth went dry. This was definitely not covered in any business handbook I'd ever read, and I was way out of my depth. "Are you sure about this?" I asked quietly. "I'm sure," she said, and there was no hesitation in her voice, no doubt in her eyes. What happened next felt like stepping into a different world, one where the careful professional boundaries I'd maintained just melted away. Victoria was warm and confident and made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Later, as late afternoon sunlight filtered through the bedroom curtains, we lay on the bed I just assembled, and I had to admit it was incredibly comfortable and definitely sturdy enough for any purpose. "So," Victoria said, her head resting on my shoulder, her voice soft and content, "what's your professional assessment? Does the bed pass all quality standards?" I laughed, feeling more relaxed than I had in months. "I'd say it's definitely well constructed. Exceeds all manufacturer specifications." "Good," she said, tracing lazy circles on my chest with her finger, "because I think I'm going to need someone to do regular maintenance checks." I stayed for dinner that night, and we talked for hours about everything and nothing. When I finally left around 10, I felt like something fundamental had shifted, not just between us, but in how I saw myself and what was possible. Over the next few weeks, Victoria became my best customer and so much more. She seemed to find all sorts of things that needed fixing or assembling. A bookshelf that arrived with a damaged panel, kitchen cabinet doors that were sticking, a complex patio furniture set that required assembly, a bathroom vanity that needed mounting. Each job led to lunch, then dinner, then evenings that stretched well past any reasonable definition of customer service. I started looking forward to her calls more than I probably should have. There was something about her that made everything else fade into the background. The stress of building a business, the uncertainty about the future, the loneliness of working by yourself all day. "You know," she said one evening as we sat on her back porch watching the sunset, sharing a bottle of wine, "I've never had a handyman who was so thorough with his follow-up service." I grinned. "I take customer satisfaction very seriously." "I can tell," she said, leaning against my shoulder. "It's one of your most appealing qualities." We both knew this had gone way beyond a normal business relationship, but neither of us seemed inclined to address it directly. It felt good, natural, in a way that didn't need explanation or definition. But Victoria became more than just a romantic interest. She started helping me think differently about my business too. She had connections in the community, friends who needed reliable handyman services, colleagues who were renovating offices, neighbors who were always dealing with home repairs. More importantly, she helped me see my own worth. "You're undervaluing yourself," she told me one morning over coffee as we reviewed my pricing structure. "Quality work deserves quality compensation. You're not just assembling furniture or fixing cabinets. You're providing peace of mind, saving people time and frustration." She helped me redesign my website, gave me advice on marketing, encouraged me to think bigger about what Fix-It-Right services could become. When I worried about raising my prices, she pointed out that I was booked solid and still turning down work. "Good problems to have," she said. "Raise your rates. The clients who value quality will pay it, and you'll weed out the ones who just want the cheapest option." She was right. Within a month of implementing her suggestions, my income doubled. I was able to buy better tools, upgrade my truck, even hire a part-time helper named Derek, who was eager to learn the trade. One afternoon, I was installing new kitchen cabinets for one of Victoria's referrals when she stopped by with lunch. The client, Mrs. Chen, was clearly impressed with both the quality of my work and the professionalism Victoria brought to even this casual visit. "You two make quite a team," Mrs. Chen observed after Victoria left. "She really believes in your work." That comment stuck with me. It was true. Victoria had become my biggest advocate, my unofficial business partner, and something much more personal that I was still trying to figure out. 3 months after that first bed frame assembly, I was installing a complex built-in entertainment center in Victoria's living room when she brought me a check for the work. "Connor," she said, sitting on the arm of her couch, "can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, setting down my drill. "Do you ever think about what you really want out of life? Not just the business stuff, but personally?" I looked at her, noting the serious tone in her voice. "Sometimes. Why?" "I've been thinking about it a lot lately," she said. "About what makes life feel worthwhile. What makes you want to get up in the morning. And I keep coming back to the same conclusion." "Which is?" She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Connection. Real connection with someone who gets you, who appreciates what you bring to the world, who makes you want to be better than you thought possible." I felt something shift in my chest. "Victoria, I know this started as just a business thing," she continued, meeting my eyes, "but it's become something else for me, something I wasn't expecting but don't want to lose." I set down my tools completely and walked over to where she sat. "It's become something else for me too." She smiled, reaching for my hands. "So what do we do about that?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never been in a situation like this before. I don't want to mess up what we have, but I also don't want to pretend it's just business anymore." "Neither have I," she said, "but maybe we don't need to figure it all out right now. Maybe we just see where it goes, one day at a time." That evening, instead of going back to my apartment, I stayed for dinner, and then I stayed the night. And somehow, over the following weeks, staying became the new normal. We fell into a comfortable routine. I'd start my day with coffee at Victoria's kitchen table, reviewing my schedule and getting her input on challenging jobs. She'd often pack me lunch, and I'd text her updates throughout the day. Evenings were spent either at her place or mine, talking about work, making plans, just enjoying each other's company. The business continued to grow rapidly. Victoria's network proved invaluable. She knew everyone in town, and her recommendation carried weight. More importantly, she helped me develop the confidence to position myself as a premium service provider rather than just another guy with a toolbox. "Stop apologizing for your prices," she told me after I landed a big commercial job renovating a local boutique. "You provide excellent work, you're reliable, you clean up after yourself, and you treat people's homes with respect. That's worth paying for." Within 6 months, I had more work than I could handle alone. Derek had become a full-time employee, and I was training a second helper. We upgraded to a proper work van with a Fix-It-Right logo professionally painted on the sides. I even rented a small workshop space to store materials and equipment. But the success felt secondary to what was happening between Victoria and me. We'd found something neither of us had been looking for, but both of us needed. She brought sophistication and business acumen to my blue-collar ambitions, while I brought energy and optimism to her more structured world. You know what I love about you? She said one evening as we sat in our favorite spot on her back porch, watching the sunset. What's that? You see possibility in everything. A broken cabinet becomes an opportunity to create something better. A piece of furniture becomes a chance to learn a new skill. Even that first day, you didn't just see a job, you saw a chance to prove yourself. I thought about that young guy who'd driven over here months ago, just hoping to make enough money to keep his business afloat. He had no idea he was about to find something infinitely more valuable than any paycheck. 8 months after assembling Victoria's bed frame, I was installing crown molding in what had become our bedroom. My apartment lease had expired, and we decided there was no point in maintaining two places when she came upstairs with 2 glasses of wine. Remember that first day? She asked, handing me a glass. When I asked you to stay and make sure the bed worked properly? I laughed, thinking back to how nervous and confused I'd been. I remember thinking I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Did you ever imagine it would lead to this? She asked, gesturing around the room that had become as much mine as hers. Not in a million years, I said honestly. But I'm glad it did. She smiled, the same warm smile that had welcomed me that first day. Me too. We stood there in comfortable silence, looking around at the life we'd accidentally built together. The bed I'd assembled still sat in the corner, solid and sturdy as the day I'd put it together. But it had become so much more than just furniture. It had become the foundation of something real, something lasting. You know what I've realized? Victoria said, setting down her wine glass and walking over to me. What's that? Sometimes the best things in life come from saying yes to opportunities you never saw coming. I pulled her close, thinking about how true that was. You're absolutely right, and I'm really glad you needed that bed frame assembled. Victoria laughed, the sound filling the room like music. Best furniture purchase I ever made. 1 year after that first phone call, I was installing custom shelving in our home office when Victoria brought me an envelope. What's this? I asked, wiping my hands on a shop rag. Open it, she said, unable to hide her excitement. Inside was a business plan, professionally bound, with the title Fix It Right Home Services, Expansion Proposal. I've been working on this for weeks, she said as I flipped through pages of market analysis, financial projections, and growth strategies. I think you're ready to take this to the next level. The plan was comprehensive and ambitious, hiring additional crews, expanding into light remodeling, maybe even opening a second location in the next town over. But what struck me most was how thoroughly she understood my business, my goals, my potential. This is incredible, I said, looking up at her, but it would require a significant investment, more than I've got saved. She smiled mysteriously. What if I told you I wanted to become your business partner? Not just your girlfriend who gives advice, but an actual partner with skin in the game. I stared at her. Are you serious? Dead serious. I believe in what you're building, Connor. I want to help you build it bigger. 6 months later, we cut the ribbon on our new workshop and office space. Fix It Right Home Services had 5 full-time employees, 3 work vans, and a backlog of projects stretching into the next quarter. Victoria had officially joined as Director of Operations, bringing the business expertise I'd never known I needed. But more than the business success, we'd built something personal that felt unshakable. What started with assembling a bed frame had become a partnership in every sense of the word. You know what's funny? Victoria said last night as we sat on the porch of the house we just bought together, I hired you to put together a bed, and you ended up putting my whole life together instead. I smiled, thinking about all the unexpected ways life can surprise you. That's what good customer service looks like. She laughed and leaned against my shoulder, and I knew that whatever came next, we'd figure it out together. After all, I'd gotten pretty good at following instructions and building things that last. And the bed? It's still working perfectly.